Welcome to Pod Key Wellness, where today it's brains, stress, sleep, and some very useful people radar. A lot of what helps the brain turns out to be a little counterintuitive. Hard intervals can help your hippocampus. Some stress is actually useful. And a few social red flags are easier to spot than we like to think. One of the most interesting brain and exercise findings here comes from a 6-month Norwegian 4x4 HIIT protocol. That kind of interval training produced hippocampal improvements, both functional and structural, that matched classic Zone 2 cardio, and the benefits were still detectable as long as 5 years after people stopped training. That matters because it suggests intensity itself. Not only time spent exercising can drive long-lasting neuroplastic change. The HIIT group also got similar aerobic fitness gains to the moderate intensity group. So this wasn't just a weird one-off brain effect with no fitness upside. And there was a dose-response link between bigger cortisol spikes during intense workouts and bigger hippocampal benefits, which is a nice reminder that cortisol isn't automatically the villain. Different training styles seem to nudge different parts of the brain. Aerobic work, from steady Zone 2 up through HIIT, tends to expand gray matter structures like the hippocampus and improve memory when people stick with it. Resistance training, especially multi-joint lifting, shows a different pattern. It's linked with better white matter integrity and faster processing speed, likely through IGF-1 pathways, and trials lasting 6 to 12 months have found fewer white matter lesions and better executive function. Then there are social motor activities like ballroom or line dancing, which are doing several jobs at once: movement, rhythm, learning, coordination, and social interaction. Those combinations appear to transfer more broadly than single-task digital brain training games, which honestly makes sense. The brain usually likes real-world complexity. A lot of adult brain plasticity is less about growing tons of brand new cells, and more about rewiring what's already there. There is some new cell production in the dentate gyrus, but most of the action is strengthening, weakening, and pruning synapses. That pruning piece is important. Mastering a skill often means trimming inefficient connections. But with age, if life gets too repetitive and there aren't many novel inputs, unused pathways can get pruned away faster, and cognition can slide with them. So novelty really matters. Challenging activities, new skills, and environments that ask more of you help preserve connections. This is where stress needs nuance. Acute stressors like exercise or brief cognitive challenge can mobilize adaptive signals like BDNF and lactate and support remodeling. Short bursts of cortisol during training can be part of that adaptation, while chronic stress without recovery is the problem. That's when you get allostatic overload, poor recovery, and worse brain function instead of better resilience. There's also a useful correction here to the way people talk about peak performance. A lot of high performers are not in some dreamy, effortless flow state. They're in what's called a clutch state, which is high arousal, effortful, and often feels hard. That means friction and focused effort are not signs that something is going wrong. In many cases, they're part of learning well and performing at your best. On the nutrition side, 3 large randomized trials found a very specific pattern with cognition. Omega-3 supplementation helped only when homocysteine-lowering B vitamins were also in good shape, and the reverse was true too. So nutrient interactions matter, and measuring status matters. Omega-3 index, B12, folate, and homocysteine can tell you a lot more than just tossing supplements at the wall and hoping one sticks. Sleep was another big one. Large cohort analyses show a sharp rise in dementia risk for people who routinely sleep under 6 hours a night. The likely reasons include fewer REM cycles, worse memory consolidation, and less glymphatic clearance, which is the brain's overnight cleanup system. Even though some expert panels haven't emphasized sleep in final risk lists, the evidence for short sleep looks comparable in magnitude to more familiar risks like hypertension and physical inactivity. And then there's the shingles vaccine data. Natural experiment studies from the UK, Australia, and Canada found lower dementia incidence among people who got Zostavax and later Shingrix. The researchers are careful here. Healthier people may be more likely to get vaccinated. So residual confounding could explain part of the effect, especially when differences show up quickly. Still, the consistency across populations makes an immunomodulatory mechanism feel plausible enough to take seriously. A quick but important note on concussion care. One pediatric concussion trial used creatine loading at 0.4 grams per kilogram per day for a week and saw faster cognitive recovery without serious side effects when high-quality creatine was used. The early post-injury window also seems critical for basic metabolic protection. Avoid hyperthermia, avoid hyperglycemia, and avoid alcohol and caffeine, because extra heat and metabolic demand can worsen mitochondrial failure and secondary neuronal injury. The other cluster of topics today is darker, but very practical. The dark tetrad includes psychopathy, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and sadism. These traits overlap and are moderately correlated, so if someone is high on one, there's a decent chance other dark traits are elevated too. It's more useful to talk about high levels of psychopathic traits than to slap a fixed label like psychopath on someone. That continuum framing reduces stigma and keeps attention on observable behavior, which is usually what matters anyway. People can often detect psychopathic tendencies surprisingly fast. Some studies suggest reliable signals show up from about 5 seconds of video. Cues include things like smiling while making hostile remarks, low guilt, or an oddly calm effect under stress. And it's worth being precise with the language around abuse. Gaslighting is intentional, emotional abuse aimed at making someone doubt their memory or perception. It's not just any disagreement that makes you feel annoyed or confused. Machiavellianism shows up as strategic, sometimes amoral pursuit of status and control. In families, that can mean fostering divisions to become the favored relative. At work, it can look like quiet sidelining of colleagues while managing upward for advantage. Narcissism also has subtypes. Grandiose narcissists are openly arrogant and can lash out when they fail. Vulnerable narcissists are more fragile and defensive, and often lean harder on guilt and emotional manipulation. Sadism can be subtle too. Everyday schadenfreude is a mild version, but higher sadistic tendencies are linked with trolling and abusive online behavior. These traits matter in leadership because confidence and ruthlessness are often mistaken for competence. That helps dark personalities rise, and the fallout can be toxic cultures, worse decisions, and eroded trust. The most realistic advice here is also the least cinematic. Pause, assess motives, set boundaries, and stop assuming you can change the person if you just explain yourself one more time but better. Interact strategically when you have to, protect your goals, and keep a supportive network around you. Traits like these are relatively stable, and while some treatment can reduce harmful behavior, especially in structured settings, full personality overhauls are uncommon. That's the roundup for today. Thanks for spending part of your day with Podkey Wellness. And I hope at least one of these ideas sticks long enough to improve your brain or your boundaries. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.